October 23, 1935, 10:15 p.m., Palace Chop House, Newark, New Jersey. The air inside the back room of the Palace Chop House smells of overpriced steak, cheap cologne, and the metallic tang of heavy-duty cleaning solvent. Outside, the rain is a relentless grey curtain hitting the Newark pavement. Inside, the only sound is the rhythmic clack-clack-clack of an adding machine. Arthur Flegenheimer, known to the world as Dutch Schultz, isn't looking at his dinner. He's looking at ledgers. His knuckles are white, gripping a fountain pen like a dagger. Suddenly the heavy oak door creaks, not a knock, a push. A man enters. He's wearing a tailored silk suit that costs more than the restaurant's monthly rent. This is a messenger from the Commission, the newly formed board of directors for the American Mafia. He isn't there to eat. He's there to deliver a message of submission. He leans over Dutch's table, exhales a cloud of expensive cigar smoke directly into the beer baron's face, and flickers a dismissive hand at the ledgers. "The Bronx is getting too small for a loudmouth like you, Dutch," the messenger sneers, loud enough for the bodyguards to hear. "Lucky wants your numbers, he wants your piece. Give it up or we'll take it while you're kneeling." The room goes silent. The moment sonoro is the heavy thud of Dutch's pen hitting the table. He doesn't scream. He doesn't reach for his piece. He leans in close, so close the messenger can see the broken capillaries in his eyes. To understand how a man like Dutch Schultz reached this moment of absolute disrespect, and why the response he's about to give would echo through the underworld for decades, we have to go back. We have to look at the Bronx when the blood was still fresh on the sidewalks. The messenger thought he had the upper hand. He didn't realize he was standing in a room with a man who had already decided that if he was going down, he was taking the entire city with him. Cliffhanger. Dutch leaned back, a ghostly smile touching his lips, and whispered the first 3 words of a sentence that would change the hierarchy of the mob forever. 12 years earlier, July 1923, 149th Street, the Bronx. The Bronx in the early 20s isn't just a borough, it's a battlefield. The smell of hops from illegal basements mixes with the stench of the Harlem River. A young Arthur Flegenheimer isn't a king yet. He's a thug with a chip on his shoulder, the size of the Empire State Building. He's working for Joey Noe, a small-time bootlegger. In the back of a dimly lit speakeasy, the Hub, Dutch is proving his worth. He isn't the strongest, but he is the most volatile. While others negotiate over territories, Dutch uses a galvanized pipe to settle the score. He learns early, fear is a more stable currency than loyalty. "Arthur, you're too messy," Joey Noe tells him one night, wiping blood off a wooden crate. "The Italians, they like things quiet. They like tradition." Dutch spits on the floor. "Tradition is for people who are afraid to lose what they have. I don't have anything yet." This is the context of his rage. Dutch wasn't made. He was self-invented. He took the name Dutch Schultz from a deceased local thug because it sounded tougher, more legendary. He began building an empire of illegal beer trucks, squeezing every mom-and-pop shop in the Bronx for protection money. The decision was simple: dominate or be dominated. He chose to automate violence. By 1928, he and Noe owned the Bronx. But the higher you climb, the more people see you as a target. The Commission in Manhattan was watching. They saw a mad dog who didn't respect the old-world rules of the Sicilian families. Cliffhanger. As Dutch walked out of the Hub that night, a black Cadillac followed him at a distance, its headlights off. The first sign that the Big Five families were no longer just watching, they were hunting. November 1928, a foggy pier on the Hudson River. The War of the Wagons wasn't fought with words, it was fought with fire and lead. The Jack Legs Diamond Gang wanted Dutch's beer roots. Diamond was a celebrity gangster, a man who loved the spotlight. Dutch hated the spotlight. He loved the power. The concrete under the pier is slick with moss and river water. Dutch stands there, watching his men dump a shipment of Diamond's whiskey into the black water. The sound of glass shattering is the only music he cares for. "He's going to come for us, Dutch," Joey Noe warns, his voice trembling. "Legs has friends in high places." "He has friends." "I have leverage," Dutch replies, lighting a cigarette. The consequence of this arrogance was immediate. Weeks later, Joey Noe, Dutch's only real friend and partner, is ambushed outside a nightclub. He's riddled with bullets. He dies in the hospital, and with him, The last bit of Dutch's humanity evaporates. Dutch doesn't go to the funeral. Instead, he spends the night in a dingy apartment in Washington Heights, cleaning his .38 and staring at a map of the city. He realizes that in this game, if you show grief, you show a weakness. He decides to move on Diamond with a ferocity that shocks the New York underworld. The city becomes a grid of fear. Every beer delivery is a potential shootout. The public is terrified, but Dutch is thriving. He is the beer baron of the Bronx. But his success creates a new problem. Thomas E. Dewey, a relentless special prosecutor who makes it his life's mission to put Schultz in a cage. Cliffhanger. While Dutch planned his revenge against Diamond, he received an anonymous tip. The police weren't his biggest threat anymore. A new player had emerged in Manhattan, Charlie "Lucky" Luciano, and he wanted a sit-down. January 1931, the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. The contrast is jarring. Dutch Schultz, with his cheap suits and aggressive posture, sits in the gilded opulence of the Waldorf Astoria. Across from him sits Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky. They look like bankers. Dutch looks like a man who just came from a fistfight. "We want a national syndicate, Dutch," Lansky says calmly, sipping tea. "No more street wars. We share the profits, we share the peace. We need you to hand over your policy racket in Harlem." Dutch feels the humiliation prickling his skin. The policy racket, the numbers game, was his new goldmine. It was pure profit, taken from the poorest residents of Harlem. To give it up was to become an employee of the Italians. "I don't share," Dutch says, his voice a low growl. "Then you die," Luciano says, his eyes cold and unblinking. "Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But the world is changing, Arthur. There's no room for independent contractors anymore." Dutch leaves the meeting without shaking hands. The atmosphere in the hallway is heavy with the smell of floor wax and impending doom. He knows he's just declared war on the entire syndicate. He returns to the Bronx and doubles down. He starts bribing judges, police captains, and politicians. He builds a fortress of corruption, but the pressure is mounting. Dewey is closing in on tax evasion charges. The syndicate is squeezing his borders. Dutch is becoming paranoid. He starts seeing traitors in every shadow. He decides that the only way to save himself is to kill the man chasing him, Thomas Dewey. Cliffhanger. When Dutch proposed the hit on the special prosecutor to the commission, the silence in the room was deafening. He didn't realize he had just signed his own death warrant by breaking the mob's ultimate rule: never kill a lawman. Summer 1935, Malone, New York. To avoid the heat in the city, Dutch moves his operations to upstate New York. He's on trial for tax evasion. The small-town atmosphere of Malone is a far cry from the grime of the Bronx. Dutch plays the part of a local hero. He buys rounds for the townspeople. He pretends to be a misunderstood businessman. "They love me here," Dutch tells his lawyer as they walk through a sun-drenched park. "The city forgot who fed them during the Depression. These people remember." He wins the trial. A jury of locals acquits him. It should be a triumph, but when Dutch returns to New York City, he finds his empire in shambles. Luciano has moved in on his territory. His lieutenants are disappearing. The beer baron is a king without a castle. He meets with his remaining crew at the Palace Chop House. The lighting is dim, flickering with the instability of his future. He is desperate. He realizes that his legal victory meant nothing to the commission. They don't care about juries. They care about business. "I'm going to do it," Dutch whispers to his henchmen, Lulu Rosenkrantz and Abe Landau. "I'm going to take out Dewey. Once he's gone, the heat dies down, and the Italians will have to respect me again." The decision is a suicide mission. The commission has already voted no on the Dewey hit. By proceeding, Dutch is directly defying the most powerful men in the country. He thinks he's being a leader. In reality, he's becoming a liability. Cliffhanger. As Dutch finished his plan, a man in the corner of the restaurant, a low-level busboy who was actually an informant for the syndicate, slipped out to a payphone. The message was simple: the Dutchman is moving. October 23, 1935, 10 p.m. The Palace Chop House. We return to the moment of the insult. The messenger, sent by Luciano, stands over Dutch. The restaurant is nearly empty, save for Dutch's loyalists and the ghosts of his ambition. "You're a relic, Dutch," the messenger says, leaning in. "You're a loud, angry little man who doesn't know when the party's over. Hand over the books, go back to Malone, and maybe, just maybe, Lucky lets you live out the year as a ghost." The humiliation is calculated. It's meant to break Dutch in front of his men. The messenger reaches out and taps Dutch on the cheek, a gesture of ultimate disrespect in the mob world. It's the slap of a child. Dutch's hand goes to his pocket, but he stops. He realizes that if he kills this messenger now, he provides the excuse they need to wipe him out instantly. He needs a moment. He needs a response that asserts his dominance without pulling the trigger. Yet. He looks at the messenger, then at the steak on his plate. He looks at the rain lashing against the window. He feels the weight of the years, the murders he committed, the money he laundered. He feels the effect lender, the realization that his name will either be a warning or a monument. He stands up. He is shorter than the messenger, but his presence fills the room like a poisonous gas. He leans into the man's ear. The bodyguards tense. The air is so thick you could cut it with a dull knife. Cliffhanger. Dutch leaned in and whispered the 7 words that would haunt the Mafia's memory. But before the messenger could react, Dutch turned his back, a move of terrifying confidence. The messenger expects a plea, he expects a curse. Instead, Dutch Schultz looks him dead in the eye, his voice as dry as a desert wind. "Go back and tell them. I'm still here." 7 words. It wasn't a threat of a bullet. It was a threat of existence. It meant that as long as Dutch Schultz drew breath, the Bronx belonged to him, and the Commission would never have peace. It was a declaration of total, uncompromising sovereignty. The messenger pales. He expected a negotiation. He didn't expect a man who had looked into the abyss and decided to move in. He turns and leaves, the bell on the door ringing with a lonely, sharp ping. "You shouldn't have said that, boss," Lulu Rosenkrantz whispers, checking the cylinder of his revolver. "Now they have to come." "Let them come," Dutch says, returning to his ledger. "I've been waiting for a reason to stop counting and start killing again." The theme of reputation is at its peak here. Dutch knows he's trapped. He knows the hitmen are likely already in their cars. But to him, his reputation is worth more than his life. He would rather die as the man who defied the Mafia than live as the man who served them. The consequence of those 7 words is an immediate mobilization. In Manhattan, Albert Anastasia, the Lord High Executioner of Murder, Inc., receives a phone call. The order is given. No more talk, no more messengers. Cliffhanger. As Dutch sat back down to his meal, he didn't notice the black sedan pulling up to the curb outside, its windshield wipers swishing rhythmically like a heartbeat. 10:15 p.m., the Palace Chop House. The moment sonoro is the sound of the men's room door swinging shut. Dutch has gone to wash his hands. He is alone for the first time that night. In the main dining area, the front door bursts open. 2 men, Charles the Bug Workman and Mendy Weiss, enter. They aren't wearing masks. They don't need them. They aren't planning on leaving witnesses. The air explodes with the roar of a .45 caliber Tommy gun and a .38 revolver. Lulu Rosenkrantz and Abe Landau are caught in a crossfire of splinters and lead. The smell of gunpowder fills the restaurant, mixing with the steam from the kitchen. Landau crawls toward the door, leaving a red trail on the checkered floor. Rosenkrantz tries to reach for the phone to call for help, his fingers slick with his own blood. In the bathroom, Dutch Schultz hears the chaos. He doesn't have his gun on him. He stands by the sink, water running over his hands. The door kicks open. Workman stands there. He sees the legendary Dutchman. He doesn't hesitate. He fires 1 shot. The bullet enters Dutch's side, tearing through his organs. Dutch doesn't fall immediately. He staggers, clutching the porcelain sink. The hitmen flee. They don't stay to finish the job. They assume the wound is mortal. They vanish into the Newark rain, leaving a scene of carnage behind them. Cliffhanger. Dutch Schultz stumbled out of the bathroom, his shirt soaked crimson, and reached for a table. He wasn't dead. Not yet. He had hours of delirium ahead of him, and he was about to start talking. October 24th, 1935, Newark City Hospital. For 20 hours, Dutch Schultz hangs on to life. He is in a state of feverish delirium. A police stenographer sits by his bed, hoping for a confession, a list of names, a map to the treasure. Instead, Dutch gives them a stream of consciousness nightmare. "A boy has never wept, nor dashed 1,000 kim," he mutters. "French-Canadian bean soup. Keep the change." The scene is haunting. The most feared man in New York is reduced to a babbling ghost. He talks about his mother, about the streets, about the big guy. He never gives up a single name that the police can use. Even in death, his loyalty is to his own twisted code. The hospital room is sterile, smelling of iodine and death. Outside, the press is gathered like vultures. The effect lender is taking hold. The news isn't just that a gangster was shot. It's that the Dutchman was taken down. The Mafia families in Manhattan wait. They need to be sure he's gone. They realize that even a dying Dutch Schultz is dangerous. His words, though nonsensical, are being printed in every newspaper. He is becoming a martyr for the old way of doing things, the independent, violent, lawless way. He won't make it to midnight, the doctor says, checking Dutch's cooling pulse. Cliffhanger. As the sun began to set over Newark, Dutch opened his eyes one last time, looked at the police officer in the room, and whispered a final chilling thought that made the officer back away from the bed. October 24th, 1935, 6:35 p.m., Newark City Hospital. Dutch Schultz is pronounced dead. He dies at age 33. He left behind a fortune in buried treasure that has never been found, a trail of bodies and a vacancy in the Bronx that would never be filled by a single man again. The consequence was absolute. The commission took over his rackets. The era of the independent mogul was over. The corporate mafia had won. Luciano and Lansky turned the underworld into a business, leaving the wild, chaotic violence of men like Dutch in the past. But those 7 words, "Go back and tell them I'm still here," became a mantra. They represent the defiance of a man who refused to be a cog in a machine. To this day, treasure hunters search the Catskills for his iron box. But his real legacy isn't gold. It's the reminder that in the criminal world, humiliation is a debt that is always paid in blood. He chose his reputation over his survival, and in doing so, he made sure the Mafia would never forget his name. The Bronx moved on. The Palace Chop House changed hands, but if you walk those streets at night in the rain, you can almost hear the ghost of a man who told the world he wasn't going anywhere, until he had no choice. Dutch Schultz lived by the gun and died by the gun, but his refusal to bow down to the commission made him a legend. He was a man out of time, a wolf in a world being built by foxes. What do you think? Was Dutch a hero for standing his ground against the corporate mob, or just a fool who didn't know when to quit? Would you have taken the deal and lived, or said those 7 words and died? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the dark corners of history.